On September 10th, 2025, political commentator Julian Vance was assassinated by a single gunshot. In the chaos that followed, two completely different stories emerged to explain what happened. One is the official narrative you've probably heard, a lone gunman driven by hate. But the other? Well, the other is a hidden story of a professional hit, a high-level cover-up, and a manufactured truth. To get to the bottom of this, we're going to have to look at both sides, starting with the story everyone was told. So, right at the heart of this case, you've got these two narratives that just cannot both be true. The official story is clean and simple. A lone gunman, angry about politics, decides to take matters into his own hands. But then you have the hidden story, which is so much darker and more complicated. It suggests a contract kill carried out by a pro and then swept under the rug by some very powerful people. We're going to break down the evidence for each. All right, so first, let's unpack the official story, the one the authorities and the media presented to the public. It paints a pretty straightforward picture of a tragic but simple act of political violence. According to the authorities, the timeline here is chillingly simple. At 12:23 p.m., a single shot rings out and Vance is hit. What follows is a massive 33-hour manhunt that ends when 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson turns himself in. And they throw the book at him. He's not just charged with murder, but with obstructing justice and tampering with witnesses too. Now, the case against Robinson looked pretty open and shut. You've got the weapon, a Mauser rifle, with his DNA right on the trigger. I mean, it doesn't get much more direct than that. Then there's the motive. They found confession text and a handwritten note saying, "I had enough of his hatred." To top it all off, the ammunition itself had anti-fascist and transgender slogans scrawled on it. When you put all that together, you've got a pretty compelling case for the prosecution. But, and this is a huge but, this is where the other story begins to take shape. It's rooted in what the source material describes as a fundamental clash between the physical evidence and the official narrative. They call it physics versus the prosecution. The very first crack in the story is the weapon itself. The official report says it was an old Mauser hunting rifle, the kind of thing that fits the profile of an amateur. But the other theory claims the real weapon was a suppressed AR-15. That's a totally different beast, a specialized tool for a professional assassin, designed for one thing, a clean, non-traceable kill. And the whole argument, the whole thing that could potentially unravel the official story, it all boils down to this one single number. 915 meters per second. That's the number at the heart of it all. Ballistic modeling showed that's how fast the bullet that killed Vance was traveling. So what's the problem? The Mauser rifle they found, it can only fire a bullet at about 500 meters per second. According to this analysis, that's not just a small discrepancy, it's a physical impossibility. The gun they found could not have fired that shot. And it's not just the bullet speed, it's the angle of the shot too. The official report claims the shot came from a rooftop 142 yards away, which would create a relatively flat bullet path. But the counter theory says, no way. They argue the wound itself tells a very different story, one of a steep downward angle. And for that to be possible, the shooter had to have been much, much closer and positioned somewhere above the target. Okay, so if the physics are pointing towards a professional hit, you have to ask the biggest question of all. Why? The contract elimination theory offers a truly shocking answer. Vance wasn't killed by his political enemies. He was killed by his own side. They called it internal asset management. This one quote from the source material really sums up the entire alleged motive. The powerful people who were bankrolling Vance's career supposedly came to a very chilling realization. He'd become uncontrollable. And at that point, he was a greater threat to them alive than he would be dead. So why did he suddenly become such a liability? Well, according to this theory, his risk profile was through the roof. His rhetoric was becoming a ticking time bomb for the people funding him. He started openly fighting with his own team and ignoring his handlers. He went from being a useful asset to a dangerous loose cannon. But maybe the real tipping point was that he was privately starting to waver on his political positions, which threatened a massive river of funding from key donors. Now, for a professional hit to really work, the people who did it have to completely disappear. And according to this theory, the only way to pull that off is to create a decoy, a patsy, someone with a story that's so simple, so believable, that nobody ever bothers to look any deeper. And that brings us to the whole concept of a designated patsy. The theory alleges that Tyler Robinson was exactly that.
He wasn't the killer. He was just the person they intentionally set up to take the fall so the real perpetrators could just fade away.
So how do you build a patsy? Well, this theory lays out a pretty chilling four-step playbook. First, you plant the perfect cover weapon, that amateur's Mauser rifle. Second, you create the motive out of thin air, the engraved bullets, the confession note. Third, those 33 hours when Robinson was missing, the theory says that's when he was with his handlers being coached on the official story. And finally, the whole thing is designed for a quick, guaranteed conviction to just close the case for good. But a cover-up this sophisticated? You couldn't pull this off without someone on the inside. Someone with immense power who could actually manipulate the evidence. This hypothesis gives that person a title, the overseer. And they say the overseer is a real person, Dr. Silas F. Reynard, the Undersecretary for Homeland and Forensic Standards. Now, what you need to know about his rank is that it puts him in the Senior Executive Service, the absolute highest level of the U.S. Civil Service. This position would have given him unparalleled access and, allegedly, the power to literally rewrite the official record. But why would someone in a position that powerful risk everything? The theory points to a psychological concept called noble cause corruption. It's this dangerous mindset where you believe your mission, your goal, is so critically important that you're justified in breaking any rule or any law to make it happen, even manipulating the forensic evidence in a murder case. So, is there any proof? The theory hinges on what's called a temporal anchor matrix. It sounds complex, but it's really just about linking a digital crime to a physical person. It breaks down into 3 simple steps. Step 1, the digital lie. A user ID, FREY, changes the bullet velocity data in the forensic database. Step 2, the physical actor. Keycard logs show that same user ID entering the command center at almost the exact same time. And step 3, the irrefutable link. The keycard shows an entry and an exit that create a tight 40-second window, and the data swap happened right in the middle of it. The theory claims this is the smoking gun that proves Dr. Reynard was physically there, making the change himself. And so we're left with 2 totally competing realities: the prosecution's patsy versus the physics professional. One story is simple, straightforward. The other is deeply complex and frankly terrifying. The final question isn't just about where the evidence leads. It's about which story you find more believable: the lone wolf they caught, or the powerful network they say got away with it.